Hello and welcome to the Phuket Stories podcast. I'm your moderator, Saigon Steve. On this recorded podcast, we'll talk with service alumni who were stationed at Phuket Air Force Base in Vietnam and talk with them about their experiences. Today's podcast is pre-recorded, but you're invited to participate on future podcasts by emailing your contact information to PhuketStories@gmail.com. That's PhuketStories@gmail.com. So let's get started with today's Phuket guest. We're talking with Harold Smith, who was in Connersville, Indiana. Harold was at Phuket in 1969, 1970s.
Yes, Steve.
Okay, you live in Connersville, Indiana. I hear that's a small town of about 14,000 people that used to be called Little Detroit. Tell us about that.
Well, at one time, because of our location and the highways and everything back in the 40s and the 30s, it was like a hub there where they had the roads and the railroads and everything like that for transportation. And they started building cars. They built the Cord, McFarland, basically about 5 or 6 cars. The Lexington was produced here. And it ran for quite a while until they started building the interstates, and then they moved away and actually went to Detroit and things like that. But, we built a lot of cars there, a lot of industry.
I did my homework, and I saw in the 40s, your town built the body for the Willys Jeep.
Well, I'll tell you the truth, Steve. You got me on that one. That's a good one. I didn't know that. Connersville's claim to fame is supposedly, Connersville's supposed to be the home of the first high school band, is one of their claims to fame. We also the home of the blower company, which is worldwide. I don't know if you ever heard of the blower industry or not, but gigantic blowers, anything from house-sized blowers to small ones that you would place around your house to move air. Yeah, we had a lot of industry in this town at one time.
So, Harold Smith, let's talk about your military career. When did you join the Air Force?
I joined the Air Force on May 18th, 1966.
And, of course, you went to Lackland Air Force Base?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's an eye-opening experience. Yeah, they get you in there, they yell at you, they scream at you, they run you in there, they finally bed you down, and I don't know if you remember now, I don't know if they've done this to you or not, but about after an hour, maybe 2 hours after you just had settled in, they come in and then start banging on the trash cans, get up, fire, and run you back out.
They used to come very early in the morning, and they holler, "Wake up," and they would bang the trash cans. 2 seconds later, they would say, "You're late." Being from a small town in Indiana and going to Lackland Air Force Base, was this your first time away from home?
The only other time I'd ever been from home was my family uprooted and moved to Florida in 62, and we lived down on a small island called Cedar Keys, Florida, for about a year. And then we came back home, and that was pretty much my only adventure out of Connersville.
Harold, when you got out of Lackland Air Force Base, what was your career field in the Air Force?
Air Police.
And how were you picked for Air Police?
When you first go in, they offer you 3 career fields you're supposed to choose. I chose my 3 career fields. I got to Lackland, they said, if you got any of these schools that are closed, all my schools were closed. I said, pick 3 more. I picked 3 more. The day the orders come down, they go, you're an air policeman. None of them was what I chose. So that's how I was chosen to be an air policeman. They needed air police cooks and fuel specialists that day out of my entire flight. That's about the 3 jobs that everybody got.
Are you a big guy that you could handle the job as an air policeman?
No, actually, everybody dropped and laughed because I was the smallest guy in the platoon. I'm 5'5", weighed 110 pounds when I went in, soaking wet, and everybody was making jokes about it until they just kept reading off names, and then you seen people's heads, eyes turned out when they kept yelling, air police, air police, air police. That was pretty much a joke.
So at 5'5", as an air policeman, people probably called you Barney Fife.
Yeah, they make jokes about my nightstick would be dragging the ground.
Harold, where were you stationed when you got orders to go to Vietnam?
I was stationed in at Stewart Air Force Base outside of New York City. I worked the main gate, base security. It was all law enforcement. I didn't have to pound the pavement and walk around the flight line. It was basically law enforcement there.
So it was nice duty until you got orders to go to Vietnam. Is that correct?
Yes, it was unexpected because I had crossed the 3-year mark, and the Air Force was starting to downsize then. They were giving early outs. So I was really expecting to get an early out. So when I got my orders, I was really surprised.
So when you got orders to go to Vietnam, you were waving people in at the front gate. Now you're going to a combat zone as a security policeman, right?
Yes, sir.
Quite a change.
Oh, yeah.
Harold, when you flew to Vietnam, what base did you land in?
Tom Snood Air Force Base.
And how long were you there before you went up to Phuket?
Oh, just 2 days.
You flew into Phuket, correct?
Yeah, we came in on Caribou. Came in sideways. The crosswinds were so bad we was actually coming in sideways. It scared the ever dickens out of me.
So I always ask everybody, what was your initial impression when you got off the plane and looked around?
God, they opened the doors and the heat hit me and that. Oh, my God. I remember it took me like at least 2 weeks to acclimate to the heat over there, just sucking down Cokes all day long, and just energy drained out of you. That's such a different environment. And, of course, I'm 5'5". I'm considered the short guy in the room. And I'm walking around, and I'm in a country where everybody's like a foot shorter than me. It's like, it's like the Wizard of Oz over there for me. I felt like a giant. Seeing everybody sitting around squatting, and yeah, it's a different world. It's a beautiful country, though.
So what was your first assignment when you got to Phuket?
Well, I started out working a day shift. I was a buck sergeant, so I would be on base patrol, jeeps, 2-man jeep patrol. I was assigned tower duty at night. I never worked any bunkers. I worked all the towers, Tower 13, the big, tall, steel tower. And just before I went into ambush, they were grooming me to work on the ground radar, the new ground radar that they were developing to sit in a tower all night long and stare at a radar screen, looking for ground movement. And that really just didn't sit well to me. I didn't think I liked the idea of that. And that when I decided I'd try to get with the ambush boys.
No, that was a lot more dangerous to go out into the ambush. Why did you pick that?
Well, I got over it. I thought, I didn't want to go to Vietnam, no offense. I wanted to get a career so that when I got out, I could use it, something to better myself with. Since that didn't happen, I thought, hey, I'm here. I'm in Vietnam. Honestly, my wife left me. I really didn't care much. They just kind of thought, let's do it. Let's, you grew up all your life seeing all these war heroes in the movies and stuff. Hey, let's go out and give it a try and, see what you're made of.
You were out looking for trouble. You were out looking for the enemy rather than them coming to you.
Right, yeah.
It doesn't get more dangerous than that.
No, it can get hairy. Somebody was watching over me over there.
Like they say, a fireman runs towards the fire. Most people's instinct is to run away from the fire. Same thing with you. Yeah. You're going towards the enemy, and your instinct basically is to be away from the enemy.
I had to conquer some fears.
Tell us about that.
As a child, when I was a child, I don't know why, but I remember waking up one night in the middle of the night, and I had never been afraid of the dark. And I remember waking up a small child, and suddenly fear gripped me. And I was scared, and I got up, and my parents weren't around. And I ran through the house trying to find them, and it just terrorized me. And I don't know why, but it stuck with me. And when I got over there, to go out in the middle of the night and sit out there in the bush by yourself, with a couple other guys, but still, I broke myself for that. And I learned to conquer my fears, which is one of my greatest times.
So you're out in the dark. You've got your M16 or your M60. Sometimes you're up in Tower 13, Tango 13 as they call it. A lot of people talk about Tango 13 on this podcast that were stationed at Phuket. What was your experience being up in the tower at nighttime?
Well, it's kind of spooky because you're thinking to yourself, well, first of all, the climb itself is a bear. My God, it's like 100-foot tower almost. I can't remember the dimension now. And then you climb all the way up there, and then you got a rope that's dangling all the way down, and you tie your equipment to it. Then you got to haul that up. So by the time you get it up there, and it's an incredible tower, but you keep thinking to yourself, is anyone going to crawl up this tower at the night? Anyone going to crawl up here? And you keep checking the stairways, looking down, but you can't see anything. And you keep thinking to yourself, I know this is a still tower, but if this gets hit by RPG, I think the RPG is going to win out probably, more likely. I don't think this take too many hits from an RPG. So, but it was incredible. They had an incredible starlight scope up there, the biggest one I've ever seen, tripod mounted, incredible field of fire. I was the only one in there, so a lot of times it was manned by two men, but I was the only one out there that night. I only worked it once.
So your experience looking out at nighttime with the night scope, did you see any enemy up there at night?
No, I carried a couple times. I carried a M16 with a starlight scope on it, and of course it was like Generation 1, and it was incredibly noisy. You would think you'd hear it a block away. I mean, it was like noisy. Of course, immediately you lost vision in one eye. You could see pretty good for about 50 yards. Seen a lot of things out there. I never saw any enemy. One night there was a form went in front of me, and thank God I had the enough sense not to fire, because one of our soldiers that was on the patrol with me had got ahead of us and had worked his way around in front of me and walked in front of me. So he'd look at it and whack him. And I thought, I reckon our ball caps. I recognized the ball cap because the Vietnamese didn't wear ball caps, and so I didn't shoot. And I thought, what the heck is he doing up in front of me? But that was the only time I ever saw anything with a starlight scope. And I said, I don't like this idea of one eye being blind all night long and the noise. So I quit carrying it. Went back to my M16.
Now, you told us before you went on this podcast that on November 17th, 1969, something major happened with you and intruders. Tell us about that.
Well, we got called into the office one day, and we were told that a GI was sleeping in his bed one night, and he woke up, and there was somebody standing in his room, and he jumped up, and the guy kicked him and hit him and ran like the Dickens out the door of the barracks. And it was a Vietnamese. And he ran, and they tried to chase him, and they basically figured out the direction he went. And they go, what the heck's going on? What's this guy doing sneaking on? So they sent a patrol the next night down to that general area, and they ran into a group of Vietnamese that had come on base. It's crazy. They were there to steal stuff. They were sneaking on base, stealing whatever they could out of these barracks and stuff. They were that bold. And that team made contact that night, and then they said, well, we need to end this. So they called us in and said, we want you guys to go down there, this general area tonight, sit up again, and if they come back tonight, we want you to bring home the bacon. So me and three other gentlemen, I was just a team member at that time, we went down, and it was right down by the, not a river, but kind of like a creek area or something like that. It was a swampy, backwash water area. There was to the west of us was a railroad trestle and a high railroad track, a trestle, a little bridge underneath there, water flowed through. Those old brokeback pigs, that you see all the time, were over there splicing around. And they set us up about 9 or 10 o'clock that night and put us out for a 6-hour bush. And usually we're pretty close together on ambush. but we spread out about 10 yards apiece this time. And there was a lot of foliage, and we couldn't see each other. So, you're pretty much on your own. And I was way down on the end, right by the bridge. And we sit there for hours, and I'm literally sitting in water. I was up to my waist sitting in it. And it's miserable. It's damp, miserable, stinks to high heaven. And I hear the splashing in the water. And I thought, what the heck is going on? So I kind of raised up and looked, and I seen one of those broke-back pigs slopping around. Because of the security lighting around the base, we got that lighting about 5 or 6 feet off the ground. It shines out. You can see them, but they can't see you. So I sit back down. And I thought, well, we're getting near the end of the shift, thank God. This is going to be a waste of time. And I heard the splashing again. And I don't know what it was, but I swear to God, the hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I said, I don't like this. And I kind of edged up on my knee, and I flipped my M16 to full auto. And the next thing I know, 2 heads come up out of the water, right at the base of the water line, right at the base of the fence. And it's 2 Vietnamese. They had swam under the bridge, and it swam right up to the fence. And I'm like 10 yards away from them, sitting. Of course, they can't see me, but I can see them. And they're sitting there at the fence, and they're talking to each other, real low, whispered. And I'm sitting there and thinking, oh, my God, what do I do? I'm some kid, 21 years old. I don't know what to do. I'm trying to remember what to do. And I'm thinking, what do I do? Wait for them to crawl the fence, come through the fence, don't shoot them now because you don't hurt anybody. They're on their side of the fence. Should I yell, halt, don't lie? What do I do? And about that time, I hear a loud splash. And they turn around real quick, look behind them. And I'm thinking, what the heck? Oh, God, there's more. And a couple seconds later, it's a godly flash and explosion. The guy to my left, who did not see them but heard them, threw a grenade behind him. It exploded. All I remember is seeing these 2 grab the fence like in a death lock. It'd be framed in my mind forever seared. And it blew me back into the water. And I raised up, and I came up, it's like my mind switched off. And I went into like a robot mode. And I emptied that magazine to where they were at. I knocked up the security lighting. I shot up the barbed wire. I tore that area up. And I heard somebody say, keep shooting. And it's just automatically, I just kept shoving in magazines on full auto, just shooting anywhere in front of me that I could. And in the meantime, what I didn't know, there was like 4 or 5 more of them who had dashed, jumped up, ran up over top of the embankment and were gone. So finally, my team leader yelled, ceasefire, ceasefire. And we got up and started moving toward the fence. We all got together. We started walking that way to where they were at. And all of a sudden, he looked like a kid, but they all looked small. This Vietnamese jumped up, popped up out of the weeds, jumped up and started running. Well, everybody just opened up on him like he was a rabbit, running. And we're shooting the dickens out of him, and people were throwing grenades and trying to get him, and he's running for dear life and dropping down, hopping up and running them. One of the guys got him with a shotgun. He's the one that got away and was found later by the Koreans and passed away during questioning. But he got away, and we settled down. We went over to the area. Everything was going on, and they started going over by the fence. And 2 of the guys crossed over the fence, and they're walking around, and they're looking. I said, hey, there was 2 right here in front of me. I said, right there in front of me. The guy goes, oh, my God. He says, I'm standing on something. So we reached down, and he pulled up a body, and we moved him up to a little bit higher ground. And he's walking around. He goes, oh, my God. I found another one. And he raised him up. And as he raised him up, the Vietnamese turned his head and said something in Vietnamese. And it literally just scared us to death because his hands were still underneath water. We had no idea. We didn't know what was going on. And basically, this is the part I was telling you about. The gentleman, out of fear, for his life, drew his revolver and fired around into him at point blank range, expiring him on the spot. And then we found the third one just a little bit further away. The base was on full alert by then. We told them what had happened. About an hour later, people started showing up. We stayed there till dawn. Crews came, recovered the bodies, searched the area. Later, intel we felt kind of bad because we didn't find any weapons on them or anything when they searched them. But all they were wearing was like button-up shirts and shorts and sandals. So if they was carrying anything, it would have dropped out anyway. There wouldn't be no way to hold on to it. But they did tell us later that they talked to some of the family members, and they were armed. We know there was at least a 45 and a 38 with them. And the amazing thing about it was the crazy thing about it all is that they were ARVN, Vietnamese soldiers. They were a gang of thieves that were operating out of the area. One was a lieutenant, one was a sergeant who were going around the Air Force bases and robbing them, stealing whatever they could. And also they said from intel from the guy they captured, said that they were walking the base, mapping it out for the VC, and being paid by the VC to map out the base for mortar and rocket attacks. So that gave us some joy there, because it upset us pretty bad. Out of the four of us, one of them quit on the spot. The gentleman I told you, whose name I won't mention, that shot the gentleman, he quit that next day. Said he didn't want anything to do with the air police anymore. He wanted to change the career field, move on with his life, which I can't blame him. But so that's how that one ended. We got a little slack over it. I remember coming home and somebody going back to barracks, and somebody said, "I hear you killed a bunch of kids." And they weren't kids; they were full-grown adults. Once the information come out, it give us our names back.
Has this haunted you the rest of your life? This scene that you had that night?
It's seared in my brain, Steve. Like I said, I never leave Vietnam. It's always there, and it comes back, and all it takes is a sound, a smell, and I'm back there.
During your tour at Phuket,
mm-hmm.
your duties every night was to go out, ambush, trying to find people that are intruding onto the base. And on that night,
right.
You were expecting armed VC or armed NVA,
yeah.
And these were basically civilians, or they were with the ARVNs, but they weren't in uniform, and they were carrying weapons. So they knew the consequences coming across the perimeter, that they were at a place they were not supposed to be.
Oh yeah, I mean, there was a curfew at night. If you went out if you walked out of the village, you went walk around the village after a certain hour, you'd be shot if you were caught out. I mean, that's just plain that you don't leave your hut or your house after a certain hour. You go out, you're a VC, you're the enemy. So yeah, they knew full well. And as you know, the bases are marked very well in English and Vietnamese. Lethal force will be used if you come on through the perimeter. So, they knew the threat and what could happen to them. They chose otherwise.
So when you went on these ambush patrols, how far out from the perimeter did you go?
The most I ever went was we went a mile one time off base. There was 6 of us that night. We went off base one time a mile. So that most of the time it was outside the perimeter, X amount of maybe a half mile or something like that. But that one time was a mile.
Did you find anything out there?
Nothing. Usually, most of the time, all you'd find is like hogs, like I told you, a monkey, hogs, snakes, pythons, snakes, anything like that. But that was the only time. Now, I did get shot at one night. That patrol I told you, where I saw the guy through the starlight scope, I was down by the river. We heard some shots, and I ducked down, and one of the guys came up real low and was yelling my name. I said, "I'm right here." He goes, "Oh my God." He said, "You don't know, but you had a tracer go right over your head." He said, "I thought you were dead." He said, I thought you were shot. And because it came in from the other side of the river. I don't know if it was the friendlies or the foe. I think it was a friendly, actually, because they were using red tracers. If you remember, the enemy used green tracers, and that was a red tracer that went over my head. So it might have been an Arvon shooting our way, just thinking it might have been, somebody crossed the river. That was the only other time I ever made any contact. Well, I was going to say, one night, the only other experience I had was we were on patrol. It was pretty early on. And as a four-man team, and I think I was the second in line. And the team had stopped. And what we would do was like the old World War II, we didn't have a clicker, but we would snap our fingers. We wanted to stop, we'd snap our fingers, everybody would stop. And then if they wanted to move up, somebody moved up, they'd snap their fingers twice, and move up. And we moved up, and I go, what's going on? The guy that was taking point wasn't there. And I said, where's he at? What the heck's going on? He said, I don't know. And I seen a foreman in front of me, about 20 yards away, walking around. And I go, hey, there he is. And I started, hey, real low, whisper. And all of a sudden, after that foreman disappeared back into the bush, the point man come up from my side. So there was a Vietnamese out there in front of us, somewhere out in the weeds. He was out there running around with each other, but we didn't make contact. We just kind of passed in, ships in the night, passing each other. That happens occasionally. You think you're outgunned, you don't know how many people there are, you don't get into it. You just say, I'll just move on out of here. It'd be the safest thing to do,
So tell us what happened when you came back to the States.
Well, came back to the States. Felt pretty much nobody knew, nobody wanted to know. Nobody to talk to. I went to VFW and stuff like that in the Legion, but they just look at you like, okay, you lost that one, didn't you?
So have you had any treatment with the VA?
I got PTSD, diabetes, neuropathy, all kinds of things like that.
Has the VA said in their records that you were definitely exposed to Agent Orange?
Oh, yes. I'm sure you know that Phuket was where they flew a lot of the Operation Ranch Hand out of, which is, you folks don't know about Operation Ranch Hand, where they defoiled Vietnam with the Agent Orange going up and down the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And they stored a lot of Agent Orange on Phuket, which just recently settled a large settlement with the Vietnamese government because they contaminated so much soil and water tables over there. There was a big, huge settlement with the United States government that had removed so many meters topsoil layer. So many children were having birth defects and stuff. And we walk through that stuff every night, Steve. When we go out in the middle of the night on these perimeter walks, going out to the bush, you would hit areas where it's just red clay, red dirt, no foliage anywhere, and you'd walk through this stuff. It was just everywhere. You couldn't get around it. Yeah, all my stuff is related to Agent Orange. That's what caused all my problems.
Well, Harold, you've had an incredible career in the Air Force. We wish you well in what you're doing today. I guess you're fully retired now, right?
Yes, sir, Steve, I am. Thank you.
And I want to leave you with this, as I try to do with everybody that I talk to. Harold Smith, also known as Smitty, thank you for your service.
Thank you, Steve. God bless you.
Well, that wraps up another episode of Phuket Stories. If you'd like to participate in a future Phuket Stories podcast, email your contact information to PhuketStories@gmail.com. That's PhuketStories@gmail.com. Until next time, thanks for listening to the Phuket Stories podcast. I'm Saigon Steve.